Choosing the right pedal is crucial for your comfort, your performance, and your control out on the trails. And the ideal choice for you will depend on a few things, like your budget, your personal preference, and your riding style, maybe even the terrain that you're riding on. So today, I'm going to go through all of the things that you may need to consider when buying a new pedal. We are supported by Crank Brothers on the channel, so I'm blessed with a lot of different models from Crank Brothers. However, the information that I'm going to share with you will apply to a lot of other brands, and where there are differences, I do have some examples of other brands that I will show you along the way so that you can see how they are different. But today I'm going to go through the difference between flats and clipless, and even the differences between other clipless models, and also compatibility with shoes and cleats, and how you can adjust cleats and keep them maintained for the future. So let's dive right in. When we talk about flats, we're talking about flat pedals. So it's this system that doesn't have a clip-in system in the center. And these are favored by beginners, I would say, because you don't have to clip in. There's no fear or learning curve that comes with the clip system. However, they are favored by advanced riders as well, because you can ride aggressively and take your foot off on technical terrain. Also, the shoes can be more affordable too, because there's less technology required with a no cleat system. And to be honest, if you're a complete beginner, you may even get away with trainers, particularly if you have a skateboard or a BMX trainer that works well with these pins that dig in and give you some grip. When it comes to different brands, they may have a slightly different ethos on shape. For example, Fun like to have a concave shape, whereas the Crank Brothers are flatter and the pin profile makes them concave. But once you've chosen your brand of choice, there will still be some choices in there. So you may be able to choose your size, for example. Now, the large pedals are usually for UK 10 and above, and that makes sure that there's enough surface area for a bigger shoe to give you stability. However, if you were to buy the large pedals and you are under size 10, you may find that your shoe's quite small and it doesn't activate all of the pins for grip on the pedal. So you might want to go for a smaller pedal in order to give you more pins and more grip. Another choice, even when you're looking at one brand, is different models. So for example, we have a Stamp 1, which is the bottom of the range on the Crank Brothers flat pedals. And it will use something like a composite, so a type of plastic, maybe instead of metal, to keep the cost down. They may use bushings instead of bearings, which can be slower spinning, but to be honest, some flat pedal users prefer that. And as you move up in the range, you get more expensive materials and more features. So for example, the middle of the range might be made out of lightweight aluminium that is more durable, and then moving right up to the top of the range. So with Crank Brothers, we have a Stamp 11, which even has a titanium spindle for added strength, but also very lightweight. Clipless pedals, it may seem strange to you that we call them clipless when they do have a kind of clip system, but it derives from the time when we were using toe clips, and this new system that clipped into your pedal was toe clipless, I guess. But basically all it means is that you now have to have a cleat fitted to your shoe, and that will attach itself to the pedal when you're on your bike. And this is favored by cross-country riders and enduro riders for efficiency, as you can get a nice circular pedal motion. It's proven to give you slightly extra power. You may even be able to pull up on the backstroke rather than just pushing down, which is what you'll get get with flat pedals. But it's also favored by aggressive riders or even downhill racers because they can ride over rough stuff and be attached to their bike and not worry about accidentally coming off a flat pedal. You may hear them called SBDs or you may hear them called Spuds, but that is a brand name that is referring to Shimano, and sometimes it's used as a generic term for all of them. But all you need to know is that there are specific cleat systems for specific brands, and you will need to make sure that you match the cleats with the right pedals as they are brand specific. Different brands use different methods in which to clip in and out. For example, Shimano use a tension system, so this mechanism will have to open in order to release you, whereas Crank Brothers, they have a certain shape on the cleat itself that allows it to come out when it's at the right angle. Different opinions and different preferences may make you go for different brands, but this is something that you will figure out over time. Another thing with clips is that there will be loads of different models. There may even be different spindle lengths, different shapes, different sizes. And the reason there is often more choice when it comes to clipless rather than flats is because you're going to be clipped into this system, and if your feet aren't at the right width, if they're not supported by the right amount of cage, for example, you can get hot spots in your feet, you can develop injuries if you're not at the right Q factor, meaning your feet aren't the right width apart. So all of these different models are there to try and help you be better engaged with your bike and work with the style of riding that you are going for. Now there are cross-country specific pedals out there, and they will be designed for people who are prioritizing cross-country courses that may be smoother trails, and perhaps that rider is prioritizing climbing efficiency and pedal efficiency and delivering better power transfer. And that's what these pedals are all about. Now the reason being is that these are, well, for one thing, designed to work with cross-country specific shoes. So as you can see, they're very stylized, they're often very stiff-soled, so they don't need a massive platform per se. There can be a small platform that mesh well with cross-country shoes, and the two of them will work well together to deliver a nice, powerful stroke and deliver decent efficiency. Whereas, for example, if you were to use a more trainer-like trail shoe on there, they may be too soft and too malleable, and they'll bend around this smaller platform and not really give you the best optimum performance for that style of riding. Now, even in one brand, there might be a couple of options here. So for example, Crank Brothers do the Egg Beater, and they also do the Candy, which are both cross-country specific. Candy is literally an egg beater with an outer shell. So I would say that egg beaters are ideal if you are using a stiff sole, because all you need to do is clip in. Whereas if you are using a composite sole, for example, that aren't that stiff, you may want a slight cage on the outside to give your foot a little bit of extra support. And it makes it slightly easier to find the pedal and clip in. Great if you are new to clipless or riding tech terrain. The cageless egg beaters have an open build, so they are very good at clearing mud and working in the muddiest of conditions, making them a favourite with cyclocross racers that are running and then jamming the mud from their shoe straight into the pedal. When you start looking at your cross-country pedals, there will be different models and different budget options as well. So for example, you might start with something that has a composite cage, much like when we were looking at the composite flats. These will be slightly more affordable. And as you move up in the range, they will become more expensive materials, potentially stronger, but certainly lighter when it comes to cross-country. You may move from bushings to faster rolling bearings, and all of these little things will add up to slightly more grams saved, but they will be more expensive, so you will have to consider whether performance or budget is more important to you. With the cross-country pedals, you'll see that they're quite small often, as you don't need much support because you get a lot of support from your shoe itself, and you won't find any pins because you don't need any grip on that cage to dig into something that's often a composite or a carbon sole. Crank Brothers do a mallet trail edition, which is quite recent, and it's a perfect mix between the cross-country candy and the e-mallet, which is enduro. And as you can see, it fits right in the middle. It's got a bigger plate than the candy, which offers you a bit of extra foot support, particularly when you are riding trail shoes that can be slightly more flexible than cross-country shoes. And also there are two little pins in there to give you a bit of extra grip on what is usually a rubber sole as well, rather than a carbon sole. This is quite a typical shape that you might see from other brands like Shimano, for example, and this is just to give you a nice balance between pedal efficiency and support when you are typically on trails riding a mix of climbing and a mix of descending. Often companies will now provide an enduro specific pedal, and this would be much burlier than a trail or a cross-country pedal. It may be slightly heavier, but it also gives you a much bigger cage with more support for your foot when it comes to descending. You may even find that you have added pins in there for extra grip, and this gives you a nice balance between clipless and flats. And also I find it's a good surface area to put your foot onto and start going again, maybe if you stopped at a technical section and you don't want to commit to clipping in. So it is a nice middle ground. You may also find that you get different spindle lengths as well, and longer spindles can give you a wider stance that may make you feel even more stable on the descents. And these are perfect for trail specific shoes. They work much better with rubber soles and shoes that are typically bigger and more durable for those aggressive descents and enduro riding. Downhill specific pedals will usually be the biggest surface area in a brand's range. They may even be as big as some flat pedals. And the reason being is that more surface area gives you more control and stability on descents when downhill riding is prioritizing fast and aggressive descending. They may also be heavier, not just because they're bigger, but they may be built up out of more durable material, because durability is more likely to be prioritized in downhill than lightweight, for example, which would be more prioritized if you were climbing, but in downhill you don't tend to do it that much. You may also find that downhill pedals, even though they're clipless, may come with a lot of pins that you can adjust on the outside cage just to give you even more grip and to stop your feet from moving around, and even further bridging that gap between flats and clipless. Plus, the bigger the cages are, the bigger the platform to help you get clipped back in. So when you're buying your new pedals, if you're buying new shoes as well, do consider whether those shoes are going to be compatible. Now, as a blanket rule, I would say whatever you are choosing pedal-wise, if you're choosing cross-country pedals for your cross-country bike, then get cross-country shoes, as they will likely work with them better than, say, a trail shoe, for example. So a good example of this is if you had a cross-country pedal, it's designed to work with a cross-country shoe. A trail shoe may be too flexible, it may have too deep a recess, it may have the wrong kind of rubber and grip system that will work with cross-country. And equally, a cross-country shoe that has running tread and a really stiff and overly shaped shoe will probably not work so well with a downhill pedal that is flat and designed to be ridden with softer, more malleable rubber soles. Although I've said you can run trainers on flat pedals, and you absolutely can, trainers will not be cycling specific. They may be too soft, they may bend around the pedals, they may give you hot spots or pins and needles. And so companies have put a lot of time and effort into creating soles that are specific for flat pedals. They may have a particular rubber compound that makes them grippy. There may be a design on the sole that is better meshing with the pins on your pedals. So do consider looking at different cycling specific shoes, even if you are running flats. Now, what I will say about shoes is they are not brand specific with pedals. You can run Shimano shoes, for example, with Crank Brothers pedals, or any other brand for that matter. However, if you are running clipless pedals, you will need a brand specific cleat to be in that shoe. So you won't be able to run a Shimano cleat system with a Crank Brothers pedal, and vice versa, you can't run a Crank Brothers cleat system in a Shimano pedal. That needs to be brand specific. So do bear that in mind. However, when you buy new pedals, you should get the new cleat system in that box, but it's something to bear in mind when you go to buy new cleats later. While all branded shoes should work with pedals, assuming that you've partnered cross-country with cross-country or downhill with downhill, there are some variations on ideas of how much a cleat is recessed, and this can cause some compatibility issues. So for example, this shoe is quite a deep recess. So if you find that a shoe that you've bought is struggling to get onto a pedal because perhaps the cleat is too far away to actually get into the cleat system, then you may want to consider some shims. So something like this actually comes with a cleat for the Crank Brothers, which means that you give a little spacer that moves the cleat out and makes it more pronounced. That should help it get into that clip system. Sometimes the opposite can happen. Sometimes your shoes might have quite pronounced cleats, and when you clip into your pedal, you might feel like you're balancing on top of the clasp system and you're not getting good enough support from the cage. There's a couple of things you can do. Obviously, you can go out and buy shoes that have a more pronounced recess in the shoe, but if you don't want to do that, if you've got a cage that has pins, then you can wind these out often, and that will give you a closer support system that should sit underneath the shoe. Many Crank Brothers pedals offer more adjustability with their replaceable traction pads, which offer different thicknesses to get the optimum shoe and pedal interface. Look for adjustability with clipless pedals to get the best fit whatever shoe, pedal combo or brand you go for. Equally, the opposite can happen with that as well. You may find that you clip into a clipless system like this with pins, and the pins are so grippy that they dig into the rubber and make it difficult for you to unclip. If that happens, then just wind the pins in, or maybe even consider taking some or all of them out. Now with Crank Brothers, they use a particular shape on their cleat to ensure that when your foot moves out or your heel moves out, the shape changes enough that it comes out of the clasp system. And you can choose different shapes that give you a different feeling. So you can have a wider release or a sooner release. You can even choose the amount of float that you have, and float is the amount of movement that you have within that clip before you clip out. However, with other systems, they operate a little differently. So for example, Shimano and Fun are generally tension based, which means that the clasp is tightened around your cleat, and it's the action of moving your heel out that opens that tension clasp and allows you to release. And you won't be able to choose different cleats for these styles of pedals. However, you will find that there is a little dial on the clasp itself that allows you to dial out the tension or dial on more tension. So that gives you the opportunity to clip out easier, or to have more security and make it more difficult for you to clip out. Now, cleats on shoes are designed to wear out because, well, they're cheaper to replace than pedals. So you might find that they're very sharp and very hard to clip out of when you first get them. And for this reason, people who use tension designs might decide to unwind the tension so it's easier to release a fresh cleat. But as they wear out, they will become easier to unclip. For that reason, you might want to dial on the tension as they start to wear out, but once they start unclipping accidentally by themselves, that's an indication that you need to replace them. Now, I have done a video on how to install cleats and set up your new shoes, so I'll leave that link in the description below if you want some help at this stage. But what I will say is, just briefly, make sure you grease up the bolts when you put them into your new shoes, because this will help stop water ingress and prevent those cleats from seizing into the shoes, or prevent the bolts from seizing into the cleats, because trust me, I've had to use drills and Dremels before to get these things out. Also, if you ride somewhere where it's quite rainy or muddy, then it's a good idea to keep on top of cleaning these out. If you have a lot of mud buildup around here, it can start to form a bit of a permanent paste, which will make it difficult for you to remove the cleats when it becomes time. So it's always a good idea to clean them and leave them on the radiator or something to dry them out, and try not to leave water on them so that they don't seize up. Even better still, when it comes to winter, or if you are an avid wet rider, then try to undo those bolts, re-grease them and put them back in periodically, maybe every month or two, because it will help you in the long run when it comes to removing them and replacing them. Different brands will have a different idea of how often you need to maintain your pedals, or indeed how you can maintain them. Some pedals can be fully rebuilt up from the center, even flat pedals can be rebuilt in some instances, and you may even be able to completely change or replace or even change the color of your pins if you really wanted to. Crank Brothers, for example, have a full rebuild kit, which means you can replace the bearings or the bushings or even the spindles in your pedals. So something of a higher value, sometimes if it is able to be rebuilt and that company is offering spares in order to rebuild a pedal, sometimes it is valuable to go for a higher value pedal if it means that you can rebuild it and keep it for as long as you are riding mountain bikes. Now, I appreciate I've given you a lot of information here to consider, and there are still a lot of models out there for you to consider, but the best way to figure out what's good for you is to try them. Now, I appreciate you can't go out there and buy everything and try them, but some shops do offer demos, and some demo days will have a particular brand that might give you some different options for you to try, and that is a great way of figuring out what clasp system or what style of clipless or flat pedal you prefer. If you've got to the end of this video and you're already an avid mountain biker and you have a preferred shoe or pedal combo, then let me know what that is down in the comments below. Or if you're buying your new set of pedals and cleats and you want help setting them up, then do find that link in the description to help you out.